for 50 years. The Mongols had never been stopped. Cities didn't fall, they vanished. Armies didn't retreat, they were erased. From China to the gates of Europe, every force that stood before them was destroyed. Everyone. Baghdad burned, Aleppo surrendered. Damascus opened its gates. And the world learned a terrible truth. Resistance meant extinction. Then, in the year 1260, something unthinkable happened. A slave army marched north. Not kings, not emperors, but men bought in chains, trained only for war. They were called the Mamluks, and they were about to face the most feared empire in human history. The Mongols laughed. They had crushed sultans. They had broken caliphates. What could slaves possibly do? But the Mongols didn't know the truth. They were being studied, lured, pulled into a valley where speed would fail, and confidence would become a weapon against them. A place called Ain Jalut. By sunset, something would die there. Not an army, a myth? This is the story of the day the Mongols bled, the battle that stopped an empire, and the moment history changed direction forever. Welcome to Battle Memoirs.
The story begins not in the deserts of Palestine, but on the vast steppes of Central Asia, a land where the wind carries the voices of warriors long dead, and where empires rise and fall with the speed of a cavalry charge. Here the Mongols were not just soldiers. They were a force of nature, born of hardship, bred for mobility, and hardened by decades of conquest. Their names inspired terror even before their horses arrived. It began with Genghis Khan, a man who unified tribes, shattered kingdoms, and transformed warfare forever. His successors inherited not only an empire of unprecedented size, but a method of war that the world had never seen before. Siege engines, cavalry tactics, psychological terror, the Mongols weaponized everything. By 1258, under Hulagu Khan, the Mongols turned their eyes to the heart of the Islamic world. Baghdad, the jewel of the Abbasid Caliphate, became their target. The city was rich, vast, and unprepared for the storm that was coming. Hulagu's armies moved like shadows, swift, silent, and deadly. Baghdad, 1258, a city that had been the intellectual, cultural, and spiritual center of the Islamic world for centuries. Scholars, merchants, and diplomats walked its streets, never imagining the horror that approached. Hulagu's army approached from the north, their cavalry stretching for miles across the plains. Siege engines rolled forward, trebuchets larger than anything Baghdad had ever seen hurled stones into the walls. The population, initially confident in the city's defenses, quickly realized their mistake. Panic spread, civilians fled. Markets emptied, guards abandoned posts. When the Mongols struck, it was total annihilation. The city fell swiftly. Scholars, merchants, and even members of the ruling family were slaughtered. The Tigris River ran black with the blood of those who resisted. Libraries, treasure houses, and mosques were destroyed. Knowledge that had been accumulated for centuries vanished in days. This was not conquest, this was obliteration, and it sent shockwaves across the Middle East. News of Baghdad's destruction traveled fast, faster than armies could march. Cities trembled, governors abandoned posts. Armies scattered before the Mongols even arrived. Hulagu's reputation grew. Not only was he a conqueror, but he was a psychological weapon. His name alone caused surrenders. In towns across Syria and Persia, civilians and soldiers alike braced for the approaching storm. And yet, Hulagu would not advance further into the Levant immediately. Political concerns in the east, particularly the need to consolidate power and manage succession, forced a partial retreat. But a detachment remained, a force that would cross the border into Palestine, leaving a trail of terror in its wake. In the Levant, the political landscape was fragile. The Crusader states still existed in small pockets, but their armies were weak, divided, and exhausted from decades of internal conflict. Jerusalem, Damascus, and Aleppo were watching nervously, unsure if they would become the next target. It was here that the Mamluks of Egypt recognized an opportunity. The Mongols, though unstoppable, had split their forces. The Levant could be defended, and a new generation of leaders, forged in the sands of Egypt and Syria, was ready to meet the storm. In Cairo, the city's politics were turbulent. The Ayyubid dynasty was weak, but the Mamluks, slaves turned elite soldiers, had risen to prominence. Among them, a man named Sultan Qutuz emerged. Qutuz understood the gravity of the Mongol threat. He did not see an invincible force, he saw a challenge. Gathering allies, consolidating power, and preparing for the inevitable confrontation became his life's work. This was not just preparation for battle, it was preparation for survival. The Mamluks knew that if they failed, the Mongols would not stop until the Middle East was entirely under their control. Alongside Qutuz, another figure was quietly rising. Baybars, a Mamluk commander of exceptional intellect and courage, began to shape the army's strategy. He understood Mongol tactics, their mobility, their feigned retreats, their psychological warfare. Baybars trained the troops tirelessly. Cavalry units, archers, and infantry were drilled to operate in perfect coordination. Every soldier was instructed in the art of deception and counterattack. Every movement had purpose. By the time the Mongols approached the Levant, the Mamluks were not simply defending, they were preparing to set a trap that history would never forget. A small but elite Mongol detachment moved south from Syria into Palestine. Their cavalry swept across villages and towns, leaving destruction in their wake. The stage was set. The Mamluks had intelligence. The Mongols, overconfident from Baghdad, were unaware of the trap awaiting them. Spies, scouts, and informants moved through cities and deserts. Every movement of the Mongols was reported back to the Mamluk commanders. This was not just a battle of swords, it was a battle of minds. Where would the Mongols camp? What route would they take? How could a smaller army strike effectively? Baybars and Qutuz debated, planned, and tested every possibility. Every scenario was rehearsed. By now the tension was palpable. The soldiers could feel it. Every desert breeze carried the possibility of death. Every horse hoofbeat in the distance was a warning. As the Mongols advanced, the Mamluks engaged in small-scale skirmishes. Like cavalry would harass supply lines, archer units would strike and retreat. False retreats were simulated to lure the Mongols into ambushes. Each encounter tested the enemy's tactics, probing their weaknesses and instilling doubt. The Mongols, used to overwhelming force, were faced with an opponent that refused to be intimidated. As the first hour, the armies face each other across the rolling hills of Galilee. Desert dust rises in the wind. Cavalry formations shimmer on the horizon. Archers adjust their positions, shields are checked, and commanders signal their units. The soldiers do not yet know the battle that awaits them, but history is about to be made. The Mongols will charge, the Mamluks will deceive, and one of the most decisive confrontations in medieval history is about to begin.
Egypt, under the shadow of annihilation. While the Mongol storm consumed cities to the east, Egypt watched in silence. Cairo did not burn. Its walls still stood. Its markets still functioned. But beneath the surface, fear moved like poison through the streets. Everyone knew the truth. Baghdad had fallen, Aleppo had submitted, Damascus had opened its gates. No great city had survived once the Mongols truly committed their strength. Egypt was next. The Mamluks, slaves turned soldiers. The fate of Egypt rested not with kings born to crowns, but with men once sold in chains. The Mamluks were not a traditional army. They were purchased as boys, trained from childhood in war, discipline, and obedience. They had no tribes to betray them, no dynasties to protect. Their loyalty was to the battlefield and to survival. From this brutal system emerged warriors hardened beyond fear. Sultan Qutuz, a ruler forged by crisis. At the center of Egypt's response stood Sultan Saif ad-Din Qutuz. He was not loved, he was not charismatic, but he understood something others did not. The Mongols could be defeated, but only once. Qutuz ruled with urgency. Every delay was dangerous, every hesitation fatal. He centralized authority, silenced rivals, and prepared the state for war. This would not be a defensive struggle. This would be a decisive confrontation. The Mongol ultimatum, then came the message. Mongol envoys arrived in Cairo carrying Hulagu's words. The message was short, cold, absolute. Submit or be destroyed. The envoys expected fear. They received silence. Qutuz listened carefully. Then he ordered the envoys executed. Their heads were displayed at Cairo's gates. The message was clear. Egypt would not surrender. A point of no return, this was not symbolic defiance. It was a declaration of war against the most feared empire on earth. Qutuz knew the risk. The Mongols never forgot insult, never forgave resistance, but submission meant annihilation anyway. There was no middle path. Baybars, the mind behind the sword. If Qutuz was resolve, Baybars was calculation. Baybars understood Mongol warfare intimately. He had studied their victories, their patterns, their arrogance. He knew their strengths, mobility, discipline, psychological terror. And he knew their weaknesses, overconfidence, dependence on momentum, predictable pursuit behavior. Baybars did not plan to meet the Mongols head-on. He planned to break their expectations. Rebuilding the army, the Mamluk army was reorganized completely. Units were retrained for flexibility. Command structures were tightened. Cavalry tactics were drilled relentlessly. Every soldier learned feigned retreat, rapid regrouping, coordinated ambush. This was no longer an army reacting to invasion. It was an army preparing a trap, intelligence over strength. Spies moved north into Syria. Messengers tracked Mongol movements. Baybars learned the critical truth. Hulagu had withdrawn eastward due to internal Mongol politics. Only a detached Mongol force remained in the Levant. Still powerful, still dangerous, but no longer invincible. A narrow window. Qutuz understood the opportunity. If Egypt waited, Hulagu would return. If Egypt advanced now, it would face a reduced enemy, but still lethal. The window was brief. This was Egypt's only chance. The Crusaders' neutral ground. As the Mamluks marched north, they passed near Crusader territories. Old enemies watched cautiously. An unspoken agreement emerged. The Crusaders would not interfere. They feared the Mongols more than they feared the Mamluks. History, for a moment, paused its grudges. The march into Palestine. The Mamluk army advanced deliberately, not rushing, not retreating. They chose terrain carefully. Baybars guided the army toward Ain Jalut, a green valley surrounded by hills, a place where mobility could be restricted, where ambushes could be concealed, where Mongol tactics could be turned against them. Psychological warfare begins. Small Mamluk units harassed Mongol scouts. Retreats were staged deliberately. False weakness was displayed. The Mongols followed as expected. Confidence grew among them. Baybars smiled. The night before battle. On the eve of confrontation, the Mamluk camp was silent. No celebration, no speeches, only preparation. Weapons were checked. Horses rested. Prayers were whispered. Every man understood the stakes. If they lost, Egypt would fall. The Islamic world would break. The Mongols would reach Africa. There would be no second chance. Dawn over Ain Jalut. As dawn rose over the valley, mist clung to the grass. The Mongols assembled confidently. They had never been stopped in open battle. Across the valley, the Mamluks waited, hidden, disciplined. Ready? The trap was set. The Mongols believed victory was inevitable. The Mamluks believed survival required deception. Only one belief would survive the day. The Mongols did not march toward Ain Jalut with caution. They advanced with certainty. For decades, no army had stood before them and survived. Cities collapsed. Kings fled. Entire populations vanished from history. Victory to the Mongols was not a possibility. It was a pattern. At the head of this force stood Kitbuqa Noyan, a seasoned Mongol general, loyal, fearless, and unshaken by reputation or faith. He had crushed resistance across Syria. He did not expect Egypt to be different. Kitbuqa was not reckless. He was experienced. But experience had taught him a dangerous lesson. Every enemy broke eventually. He believed the Mamluks would do the same. What he did not understand was that this enemy had studied him. Mongol scouts encountered Mamluk cavalry on the outskirts of Palestine. The engagement was brief. Arrows were exchanged. Horses maneuvered. Then the Mamluks withdrew quickly, cleanly, too cleanly. To the Mongols, this confirmed everything they believed. The enemy was afraid. Baybars had expected this reaction. He ordered controlled withdrawals, not chaotic retreats. Each movement was calculated. Each retreat led the Mongols further from open plains and deeper toward restricted terrain. The Mongols followed. They always followed. Mongol warfare depended on momentum. When they chased, they crushed. When enemies fled, they collapsed. The Mamluk retreats fed Mongol confidence. They believed the battle was already won, and that belief blinded them. As the Mongols advanced, the land began to change. Wide plains narrowed, hills rose. Vegetation thickened, visibility dropped. Baybars was guiding them toward Ain Jalut, a place where speed could be neutralized, formations disrupted, and ambushes hidden. The Mongols did not slow. Behind the retreating units, the Mamluks moved silently. Detachments positioned themselves in hills. Archers concealed themselves among trees and tall grass. Heavy cavalry waited, motionless. The battlefield was being assembled piece by piece. Reports reached Kitbuqa. The Mamluks were withdrawing again. He smiled. This was familiar. He ordered full pursuit. No caution, no delay. The Mongol army surged forward. Baybars personally led the forward units. He allowed the Mongols to see him retreat, to feel close, to believe the kill was within reach. This was not cowardice. This was bait. The valley echoed with hooves. Dust clouds rose. Mongol horns sounded, not signals of caution, but of dominance. They believed they were hunting a broken army. They were running into a cage. As Mongol forces entered the Ain Jalut Valley, the terrain closed around them. Hills restricted movement. Trees obscured vision. Lines stretched thin. Still, no resistance appeared, only retreat. Kitbuqa pressed forward. Once inside the valley, withdrawal would be difficult. But he did not consider retreat necessary. The retreating Mamluks felt the danger. Every instinct screamed to flee faster. But discipline held. They withdrew just enough. Never panicking, never breaking formation. Baybars watched carefully. The timing had to be perfect. Hidden units waited. Hands gripped weapons. Horses stood silent. Every man understood the plan. They would not attack until the Mongols were fully committed. Not one step too early. Not one moment too late. Confidence became recklessness. The Mongol formation stretched. Units separated. Coordination weakened. Momentum replaced control. This was the opening Baybars needed. For a brief moment, the battlefield was strangely quiet. The Mongols advanced. The Mamluks retreated. The valley held its breath. Suddenly, Baybars turned his horse. He raised his arm. The retreat stopped. Mamluk riders wheeled around in perfect formation. The Mongols hesitated, only for a second. But a second was enough. From the hills, Mamluk horns sounded. Arrows rained down. Hidden units surged forward. The valley exploded into chaos. The Mongols had been lured exactly where Baybars wanted them. The Mongols had faced ambushes before, but never like this. The enemy did not collapse. They attacked with discipline, from multiple directions, with perfect timing. Momentum shattered. Kitbuqa reacted instantly. He rallied his men. He counterattacked. The Mongols were still deadly. The battle was far from over, but something had changed. For the first time, the Mongols were fighting an enemy that refused to break. The valley became a grinding struggle. Charge met charge, arrow met shield. Steel clashed with steel. No side retreated. This was no longer pursuit. This was war. The Mongols had entered Ain Jalut believing victory was inevitable. They now realized they had entered a battle they did not control. And the most dangerous part was yet to come. The valley erupts. Ain Jalut exploded. The ambush struck with terrifying precision. From the hills, arrows poured down in black waves. From the flanks, Mamluk cavalry surged forward. From the rear, fresh units closed the escape routes. The Mongols, masters of sudden violence, were now surrounded by it. For the first time in decades, Mongol momentum shattered. The collapse of the perfect chase. The pursuit that had defined Mongol warfare betrayed them. Their formations were stretched, their units separated, their command signals drowned in noise. They tried to regroup. But the battlefield no longer belonged to them. Steel against steel, this was no massacre. This was a brutal contest. Mongol horsemen fought with ferocity, firing arrows at close range, countercharging whenever space allowed. Mamluk cavalry answered with discipline, rotating fresh units, maintaining pressure, refusing reckless pursuit. Every clash was deliberate, every movement intentional. Baybars presses the advantage. Baybars did not allow chaos to rule. He moved constantly across the battlefield, reinforcing weak points, redirecting attacks, tightening the trap. Where the Mongols broke through, reserves closed the gap. Where Mongols regrouped, pressure intensified. This was not luck, this was control. The Mongols adapt. Too late, Kitbuqa ordered counter-ambush tactics. He attempted feigned retreats of his own, but the terrain betrayed him. There was no open space to maneuver. No endless plains to reset the fight. Ain Jalut was a cage, and it was closing. The sound of fear. For the first time, Mongol war horns changed tone. They no longer signaled dominance. They called for regrouping, for support, for survival. Mamluk soldiers heard it, and they understood. Sultan Qutuz enters the fight. Until now, Qutuz had held back. Watching. Waiting. Then he mounted his horse and charged into the fray. Not as a distant ruler, but as a warrior. His presence electrified the Mamluk lines. This was not just a battle. This was the defense of existence, the turning point. With renewed force, the Mamluks surged forward. The Mongols were pushed back toward the valley center. Horses stumbled, units collapsed. Command structure fractured. The myth of Mongol invincibility began to die. Kitbuqa refuses to yield. Kitbuqa did not flee. He fought. He rallied what remained of his elite guard and launched a final counterattack. It was fierce, it was desperate, and it failed. Death of a Mongol general. Surrounded, wounded, but unbroken, Kitbuqa was captured. He was offered mercy. He refused. According to accounts, he spoke without fear. A general who had never known defeat would not beg at its arrival. He was executed, and with him died something far greater than one man. The unthinkable becomes reality. News spread across the battlefield. Kitbuqa was dead, the Mongols defeated. Panic rippled through their ranks. Units attempted to escape. Few succeeded. Ain Jalut became a slaughter not of civilians, but of certainty. The Mongol retreat. By sunset, the valley belonged entirely to the Mamluks. The surviving Mongols fled north. They were pursued, but not recklessly. Baybars knew the lesson of history. Victory could still be stolen by arrogance. He did not repeat Mongol mistakes. Silence after the storm. As night fell, the battlefield grew quiet. Bodies lay among trampled grass. Broken weapons glinted under moonlight. The air smelled of blood and dust, and disbelief. The Mongols had been stopped. What had truly been won? This was not just a battlefield victory. It was a psychological earthquake. The Mongols were no longer unstoppable. They could be fought, they could be beaten, and the world would never be the same. The cost of survival. The Mamluks paid heavily. Thousands lay dead. Victory had not been free, but survival never is. Qutuz and Baybars knew this moment would define generations. A message sent across empires from Cairo to Damascus, from Europe to Central Asia. The news traveled fast. The Mongols had lost a decisive battle. History had turned. At Ain Jalut, the Mongols learned something they had never faced before. Not fear, not submission, resistance. Dawn rose quietly over Ain Jalut. There was no celebration, only exhaustion. The valley that had echoed with thunder now lay silent. Broken weapons scattered across trampled grass, banners torn, horses wandering without riders. The Mamluks had survived. The Mongols had been stopped. But victory carried weight. Thousands of Mamluks lay dead, men who had trained from childhood, men who had stood their ground when no one else had. Victory had not come cheaply. Qutuz walked the battlefield in silence, understanding the truth every commander learns too late. History remembers victories, but soldiers remember the fallen. News of Ain Jalut spread faster than the armies themselves. From Damascus to Cairo, from Constantinople to Rome, from the Mongol heartlands to distant Europe. For the first time in living memory, the Mongols had suffered a decisive defeat in open battle. The psychological damage was immense. The Mongol garrisons in Syria collapsed. Cities that had submitted now revolted. Damascus reopened its gates, not to conquerors, but to liberators. The Mamluks advanced carefully, securing territory without overextension. They had learned the cost of arrogance. On the march back to Egypt, Qutuz relaxed, briefly. He believed the greatest danger had passed. He was wrong. Political ambition does not die on battlefields, it waits. During a hunting expedition near Cairo, Qutuz was attacked. Baybars was among the conspirators. The man who had helped save the Islamic world now removed the man who ruled it. Qutuz died not in glory, but in betrayal. History is rarely clean. Baybars became sultan, not by inheritance, not by election, but by force, the same force that had shaped his life. Yet Baybars understood something crucial. Victory at Ain Jalut meant nothing if it was not defended. Baybars reorganized the Mamluk state. Borders were secured, fortresses strengthened. The army professionalized further. He did not seek reckless expansion. He sought permanence. The Mongols attempted retaliation. Raids followed. But the illusion of invincibility was gone. Resistance multiplied. Every enemy now believed what Ain Jalut proved. The Mongols could bleed. Ain Jalut changed the world in ways few understood at the time. It stopped Mongol expansion into Egypt, North Africa. Possibly Europe from the south, it preserved centers of learning, faith, and culture. Had Ain Jalut fallen, history itself would have taken a darker path. Ain Jalut was not just about Islam versus Mongols. It was about discipline versus terror strategy versus momentum, preparation versus inevitability. It proved that even the most unstoppable force can be defeated once. The Mamluks ruled Egypt for centuries. Former slaves became kings. Their society was harsh, but their military legacy was unmatched. They stood where others collapsed, and the world endured because of it. Today Ain Jalut is quiet. Grass grows where blood once soaked the earth. Few visitors understand what happened there, but history remembers. Because in that valley, the future was decided. Every empire believes it is eternal. Every army believes it is unbeatable. Ain Jalut reminds us, no power is immune to resistance. No legend survives its first true test. At Ain Jalut, the Mongols lost more than a battle. They lost their myth, and the world was given time to breathe.